Hey there guys, welcome to the video. My name is Pushpinder Gill, and in this video we're going to be talking about the curves of the short run costs. Now I suppose in the previous video you already know what is average cost and average variable cost, total variable cost and total costs. Right? So in the previous video we actually defined all that. In this video we're going to be seeing how they actually behave when it comes to a graph, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that let's suppose we have the quantity of labor employed. Let's suppose that the quantity of labor employed is like 0, 1, 2, 3. So yeah, what I'll be doing is I'll be actually creating this graph real time with you so that you're able to do that in your exam, right? So this is the quantity of labor employed. So only thing that we're going to assume is the total product. So this is something which is the total product, right? So let's suppose at 0 labor employed, so this is the labor employed. I'm going to take the variable factor, quantity of variable factor to be labor, right? So the type of the variable factor to be labor. So let's suppose that when you do not have any labor, you do not produce anything. When you have one person, you produce 10 units. Let's suppose you produce 25 here. So the total product has to actually increase. So you can give any number, has to actually increase when your quantity of the variable factor increases, right? So this is something what we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just to make sure that we do not mix this up, just gonna draw some lines here, right? So that you understand it in a better way. Now let's go ahead and try to find out all other factors. So this is something which is the quantity of variable factor, then we have the total product. Now let's go ahead and try to find out that what is going to be the total fixed cost, right? So the total fixed cost is something which remains constant. You can actually pick up any number that you want. It is something which is a constant. So again, something you can assume. Let's suppose the total fixed cost is $400. Let's suppose let's keep it in terms of dollars, right? So at 0, the cost is 0, right? Just have to draw it like this. And I'm sorry, even at 0, the cost is 400. I'm sorry, because fixed cost remains the same no matter what. So it remains 400 throughout, which is like this. Now let's go ahead and try to find out, try to put in what is the total variable cost. Now this is something which actually increases with respect to your quantity of variable factor employed. So again, let's keep it in increasing order. Let's suppose for this is 200, this 100, and it's going to be proportional to the quantity of labor employed. So I'm just going to increase it by a factor of 200 every single time, right? So these are just assumed numbers that we're saying, but understand, you have to make sure that variable factor increases as the quantity of variable factor, total variable cost increases as the quantity of variable factor increases, and fixed cost remains the same and total product increases. Now let's go ahead and calculate the total cost. So the total cost is actually going to be the total. So total cost is nothing but the total variable cost plus the total fixed cost. So 400 plus 0 is going to be 400. 400 plus 200 is going to be 600. And then you can easily observe the pattern that this is how it goes. Right? So this is what we have. And there you go. Now, since we have the total cost, let's calculate the average fixed cost. Right? So let's go ahead and calculate the average fixed cost. Now, what is average fixed cost? Average fixed cost is nothing but the total cost, that is the total cost, which is 400, divided by the quantity of variable factor. So average fixed cost, so I'm just going to write it down here. Average fixed cost is the total cost divided by the quantity of labor employed, right? So over here, we're not going to do that because this is going to be 400 by 0, which is absolutely not imaginable. Let's do this. So this over here, it's alright, so this over here, it's actually going to be, it's actually total cost divided by the output, right? So that's actually the output. So this over here, it's actually going to be 600, the total fixed cost is 400 divided by 10, which is going to be 40. 400 divided by 25, which is going to be 16. 400 divided by 45. You can actually use your calculators in case you want. So I'm just gonna fill up the numbers, which are gonna be like this, right? So that is what it's gonna be, because 400 divided by 120 is gonna be 3.33. Then let's calculate the average variable cost. Now if I go ahead and calculate the average variable cost is going to be equal to, so this is total fixed cost, I'm sorry. Average variable cost is going to be the total variable cost divided by the output. So this is actually the output here. So average variable cost, we're not going to calculate for here. Over here is going to be the total variable cost, which is 200 divided by 10, which is 20. Then we have 16, then we have 13.33, then we have 11.43, 11.11, 12.17, okay. We have 0, we have 20, which is 200 by 10, then we have 16, then we have 13.33, then we have 11.43, then we have 11.11, sorry, we have 11.43 again, right? Then it's 12.17, and then it's 13.33. So if you go ahead and calculate this, 13.33 is nothing but the total variable cost, that is 1600 divided by 120. Then just few things left, that is the average total cost. So average total cost is actually going to be the sum of the average fixed cost and the average variable cost. So this is not going to be calculated, and this is going to be 40 plus 20, 60. This is going to be 32. This is going to be 22.22. This is going to be 17.14. This is going to be 15.55, 15.24, 15.65, and 16.67. Right? Now the last thing left is actually marginal cost. Now what is marginal cost? Marginal cost is actually equal to the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. That is the total cost old minus the total cost new, just have to take the positive, divided by the change in the quantity, right? So let's actually go ahead and see. So what's the change in the total cost? Now over here we'll be looking at change. So we'll be finding the marginal cost for these two terms here. So for these two terms, the change in your total cost is actually going to be equal to, so we had the total cost to be 600 minus 400, which is 200. 200 divided by 10. So I'll just show it to you. It's 600 minus 400 divided by, and your change in output is 10 minus 0. So it's 10 minus 0, which is 200 over 10, which is actually equal to 20. So this over here, it's actually equal to 20. For this, it's 400. So the total cost 800 minus 600, 200. 200 divided by 15, which is actually going to be 13.33. For this is going to be 10. This is going to be 8. This is going to be 10 again. This is going to be 13.33, 20, and 40. So you can clearly see the change in the total cost is 200 all the way divided by 200 divided by 5, and you're going to get 40, right? So this is what we have. Now we've actually done the whole job here. Now let's go ahead and try to see how the graphs behave, right? This is something which is very, very important. So I'm going to use this table as the reference here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the curve for all the costs. So this is what we have, and this is going to be our output, that is actually in units, right? And this is what we have, and then we're gonna have our costs, which is actually in dollars, right? So this is what we have. Now let's go ahead and mark something. So this is 0. Let's say this is kind of like 50. Let's say this is like 100, and this is like, let's say 150, and let's say this is 5, and let's say this is 10, this is 15, this is 20. Why am I drawing this with my own hand? Because I want you to feel it natural, right? I don't want you to be feeling, I'm using a calculator, or I'm just using a program to just tell you this is how the curve looks like. So we're going to draw the curve. Now first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to draw the so we're just going to draw, we have already drawn the total fixed cost, total cost, and total variable cost. We've already drawn the curve for total variable cost, total fixed cost, and total cost. We're going to be drawing the cost for these 4 curves, right? So let's talk about the average fixed cost. Now what happens to the average fixed cost? it starts at 40, then goes to 16, then goes to 8, then goes to 5, then goes to 4, then goes to 3, then goes to 3, then goes to 3. So it's actually going down all the time. See, from 40 all the way to 3.33. So that is how it goes. So it actually decreases. So it starts from 40 though. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from 40. So we're going to start from here, right? And we are going to go down something like this. So this is nothing but our average fixed cost. Now let's go ahead and try to find what is your average variable cost. So let's go ahead and try to find what is the average variable cost. So average variable cost, this is the average variable cost. It starts at 20, right? Goes to 16, goes to 13, goes to 11, and then again goes to 11, right? So at quantity, if at quantity of labor employed 5, that means at total product equal to 90. So at total product equal to 90, it actually reaches its minimum point. So it starts from 20. From total at total product equal to 90, it actually reaches its minimum point, and then it grows back again. So it starts from 20, right? It pretty much starts from the same point, right? So it starts from almost 20, and then the average variable cost. So if I say this is the average variable cost, and it reaches its minimum point at 90. So over here is going to reach its minimum point, right? Which actually corresponds to an 11.11 cost, right? So it actually corresponds to 11.11. So what is, I'm sorry. So what is 11.11? This is something which is like 11.11. So this is going to be its minimum cost, and it's going to start from here, and eventually it will grow back like this. So this is your average variable cost. So suppose you're understanding what I'm trying to do here, right? We're actually drawing these curves so that we match everything from the table that we've drawn. Now let's go ahead and try to see the marginal cost. That is actually very important. So marginal cost goes at 20, starts at 20 again, right? And it goes at this should start at 20, so, and that should start at 40. I'm sorry, this should start at 20. Sorry, the average variable cost should actually start at 20, so it should be starting at 20 here. So it's pretty much, it should be starting at 20 here, right? So it actually starts from here. Doesn't matter though, which actually is not what I'm trying to show here. So now let's try to see what is the marginal cost. Now what happens to the marginal cost is that it starts at 20, goes to 13, goes to 10, goes to 8, reaches its minimum point. So it reaches its minimum point 10, and that is actually between 70 and 90. So it reaches at minimum point 10, that is actually between 70 and 90, which is actually going to be 60, and that 60 is actually going to correspond to 10. So that 60 is actually going to go, so this so if I say this is 50, so this 60 is actually going to correspond to 10 here, right? So it's actually going to be right here. So this is its minimum point, and actually it starts from, so marginal cost, it's something which actually starts from 20 again. So you can clearly see that it starts from 20. So if I put 20 here, it actually kind of starts from here, right? And one more thing, one important thing, that you can clearly see that marginal cost is something which is always lesser than the fixed cost. If this is 20, this is 40. If this is 13, this is 16, right? And after 10, what happens is, after 10's marginal cost, if this is 10, this is 16, this is 8.89, this is 8, this is 5.71, this is 10. So what happens after this minimum point, the marginal cost becomes more than the average fixed cost, which is pretty much there. So another important thing is that this marginal cost, when will it actually meet the average variable cost? When will this marginal cost curve meet the average variable cost? So what is the average variable cost? You can clearly see average variable cost is here. Now at the minimum point of average variable cost, which is 11.11, marginal cost is also between 10 and 13. So that means the marginal cost will actually meet the average variable cost at its lowest point, right? So that essentially means that the marginal cost curve will cut the average variable cost at its lowest point. Again, very important. Clearly, see here, the marginal cost is between 10 and 13 here. So, and it's minimum 11.11 for average variable cost, but means in this horizon, in this range, marginal cost is going to be between 13.33 and 11, which means it will meet the average variable cost at 11.11. So it will meet the average variable cost at this point right here. So this is how it goes. So this is your marginal costs, right? And marginal cost is something which actually cuts your average variable cost from its lowest point, right? So I suppose you're understanding this point over here. Now let's actually go ahead and draw the average total cost. Now what happens to the average total cost? Now let's see. Average total cost is nothing but your average fixed cost plus. So I'm just going to use a different color for it. It's average fixed cost plus your average uh, variable cost. That is what your average total cost is. So this curve is actually going to be again, you know, when does average total cost is being cut by the marginal cost? So if you see the average total cost here, what's the minimum of average total cost? That is again, that is actually equal to 15.55. That's the minimum, right? No, sorry, that is actually going to be 15.24. And in between 13.33 and 20, even the marginal cost will be 15.24, right? So that means even the marginal cost will cut the average total cost from its lowest point. So the average total cost will actually be cut by the marginal cost at its lowest point, which is 15.55, which corresponds, I'm sorry, 15.24, which corresponds to 105. So 15.24, which corresponds to 105, which is going to be like this. And since if I add this curve with this curve, I'm actually going to get a curve like this. So this is nothing but our average total cost. So suppose you're understanding what I'm trying to say here, you can actually watch this, whatever explanation I've given over and over again, just to understand how do these curves actually cut each other. Now this is actually what this curve gave us. Now let's actually draw it again. So this is actually going to be my cost, this is going to be my output, and like my average variable cost is going to be something like this. My average total cost is actually going to be something like this. Understand that their lowest points are not going to be perpendicular to each other. The lowest point for average total cost is going to be a little to the right, and marginal cost is actually going to be a cost which is going to cut both of them at its lowest point. So this is the marginal cost, this is the average total cost, and this is the average variable cost, right? So I suppose you're understanding this point over here, guys. We've actually covered up the how to actually draw these graphs. So I suppose you've understood this, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about long run costs, right? So, you know, don't forget to watch that. And this would be your website address, that is perfect-course.com. Don't forget to explore that and give us your valuable. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on all the social networks, and this is going to be your email address to give us your valuable feedback, right? So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.